everybody doing today? How many of you guys are return Ballroom 20 visitors? How many newbies we have here? Welcome. This is a big year for us, as you might have heard or seen. It's Comic-Con 50. 50 years of Comic-Con in San Diego was by no means a small feat, so let's hear it for Comic-Con, I guess, right? It started 50 years ago in the basement of the U.S. Grant with 300 people in attendance in a room, maybe a quarter the size. Decades later, it just blossomed. It blew up and grew into this huge event, world-class pop culture convention that, you know, everyone hears about all over the world. It's great. And we can only do this because you guys are here, our fans, our attendees. You guys love action figures, video games, comic books, film, TV, everything. And this is the place to do it. And let your freak flag fly, as they say. So let's give yourselves a round of applause for coming, right? Thank you. Before we get started, I have to do my usual spiel. Please no recording of any of the footage that is shown on the screens. The studios and the networks are gracious enough to bring us this exclusive content just for you guys. And if you do that, it's just going to ruin it for everyone, and maybe they won't come back, maybe they will, but it'll just put a frown on everyone's face. So before we get started, welcome to Comic-Con 50, Ballroom 20. We'll be right back with some great programs for you guys, right? Thanks.
Anatomy of the Superhero. I'm Ray Costa of Costa Communications. We produce this event every year, and we're so excited. We started in about a 200-seat venue to the last 3 years we've been in the Indigo Ballroom, and now we're in this 5,000-seat theater with the most amazing sound system. They just upgraded it, so these clips sound even better in this room. So we have an amazing group of composers this year. We have the superhero of composers, and I'm so excited. First off, I do want to thank our sponsors, ASCAP and BMI, who half the composers are ASCAP and half are BMI, so I'm so happy that they helped make this possible. And I'm going to introduce each composer one at a time. The first person I will be bringing up has been here at least 5 of the 7 times. And I don't like to repeat composers, but he keeps doing new and exciting projects. And he's done everything. You saw his clips from The Flash and Arrow, and he's got a couple of new shows coming up. And my friend and the co-composer of the new Batwoman, Mr. Blake Neely. Now, people have said to me in the past, why don't, you don't have any women composers up there. And it's like, well, when women start doing big superhero movies, then we can have them on this panel. So there's no one more deserving to be the first female composer to do a Marvel film. And when it opened, it was the 5th or 7th highest grossing box office film opening of all times. And she is now the highest grossing box office composer of a single film. And it's my honor and privilege to introduce Pinar Toprak. Now, this next composer has had a really rough time in the last few years. He had 2 superhero movies come out within a week of each other, Hellboy and Shazam. He did a couple of other little movies that got a little bit of attention, one being Hidden Figures. And just this week, he received an Emmy nomination for Hostile Planet. So it's my pleasure to introduce Benjamin Wallfish. Now this next composer, another female composer, well deserving to be here. She has orchestrated years ago over about 100 episodes of Family Guy and American Dad, and then really cut her teeth doing amazing work as a composer. She's worked with Blake for years. She's co-composing on Riverdale and Blind Spot, and also on the new Batwoman. She's also she was selected to be in the Sundance Institute Film Music Workshop, as well as the ASCAP Composer Workshop. And it's my thrill and honor to introduce Sherry Chung. And then our last composer on the panel here, he's been on, this is his second time on. He came on for Agent Carter years ago. He's also recently scored and did all the songs for Ugly Dolls, which were performed by Kelly Clarkson, Blake Sheldon, Blake Neely, no. And he's got the new antithesis of superheroes coming out. The Boys, and that's because he also worked with Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen on that lovely family movie, Sausage Party. So it's my thrill and honor to introduce Mr. Christopher Leonard. Now, this last composer has been pretty down and out, and I've, been trying to get him on this panel, and so he had agreed to moderate, so I'm going to be sitting there, and this guy here, he's done like some other movies. What did he do? He did like that little movie called Up that he won an Oscar for. He's done Doctor Strange, maybe Doctor Strange 2, we don't know yet. And he did 2 Spider-Man, and #1 in the box office for two weeks in a row now is the new Spider-Man Far From Home. And it's my thrill and privilege to introduce Mr. Michael Giacchino. One last thing. So we have a mic back there for questions. For, I think, the first 12 or 15 people who ask questions, they will get this goodie bag filled with lots of great stuff. And, look, it says, it's Spider-Man. And the person who asks the best question gets a Spider-Man Far From Home from Spain in Spanish, signed by Michael Giacchino.
Wow! All right, that'll be worth $2. Hey everybody, how are you? Make it sound like the room's full. How are you? All right, that's much better. Oh my God, I love being here. I have been coming to Comic-Con for years, and mainly because I just love walking the floor and I love seeing all the things that people do and bring here, and it's just like, to be up here in front of you guys doing this, it just caps it all off. So how are you guys doing here? Great. Yeah? So what do we got? We're going to start with some clips, and then we're going to talk to these guys. You're going to have a chance to talk to them. I see Mr. David Silverman's in the audience. Welcome, David. Everyone say welcome, David. Welcome, David. All right, excellent. So I think our first clip is going to be from Ben. Ben, what did you bring us today?
Sometimes you just got to celebrate the musicians, and they're the most important people. I think people will agree that bring our music to life. And I was so lucky on Shazam, we assembled a 100-piece orchestra who just played their heart out. And this is a little music video, and this is actually the very first time it's been shown to anyone, so you guys are the first to see it. And it's an edited version, and it's just a little music video from the Shazam theme, and it's celebrating these incredible musicians. I hope you enjoy it.
I saw it.
And it's a really ambitious film. Andy is, I think, it's his masterpiece. It's kind of growing on the first movie in a way which, I don't know, I think none of us really expected when we started working on it. It's incredibly powerful, emotional movie, and it brings a cathartic end to this saga. And I think you guys should all go see it. I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, just tell us how it ends. It'll be a lot easier.
There's a kitten. And,
connection, tell me about your connection to superheroes. When you were a kid, were you a comic book reader? Did you love this stuff? What was your, go-to thing when you were a kid?
I mean, growing up in the 80s, it was all about John Williams, and it was just...
Yeah. Who?
I just remember seeing E.T. It was one of those things, I think I was maybe 6 or 7, and it was that feeling, like, as a kid, you've got no idea about it. There was just this moment of, this is something special. This is, I mean, as much as you can when you're 6, and it sort of set me on this journey of trying to just, like, figure out what this music is, how does this harmonic language work, and obviously that took a lot of time, and still on the very beginning of that journey, but it was all about just growing up in the 80s and that heyday of that incredible music of John Williams and all the other composers working around that.
And what was your first superhero movie that you can remember seeing?
Probably Superman 2, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We got some Superman 2 fans, right on. Show yourself. Well, the Niagara Falls scene is pretty cool, like that's
But Tim Burton and those Batman movies too. I mean, those Danny Elfman score I think was pretty seminal. I mean, yeah, it was a great time to grow up.
Yeah, no, I think we can all agree that Batman, that original Batman, was pretty amazing. That was an amazing film, and Danny did a great score, right? Right on. All right, so Pinar, what do you got for us here?
The scene I got is the first scene that I actually saw in Captain Marvel. Before I even saw the film, they had this previous scene, which is like a storyboard on steroids, as I call it. So this was my audition piece. And I wanted to show that.
So they didn't show you the whole movie, they just gave you a section of the movie and said, here, score this, and then we'll make our decision.
Yes, and
that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that scary?
It was, yeah, very scary. But so what I did was, the way I do everything, I just need to give it my all, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So I went and hired a 70-piece orchestra. And this massive...
Did you pay for that?
I did.
So you paid for a 70-piece orchestra to do your demo?
I did.
That's awesome. That's
yeah, I figured, even if I didn't get it, it would get me closer to the next time.
Right.
So, but I'm very grateful. It worked out.
And it goes back to what Ben was saying earlier, that the musicians are such an important part of the process of what we do. I always like to say that without them, all I have are black dots on a page, and until they actually take it into their hands and bring it to life, it's really nothing.
Absolutely, and I wanted them to see, I want everybody at Marvel to see that I could actually handle the orchestra, so I did this whole video thing, similar to what you guys saw, and I even did another video where I talked to the camera like an actor's self-audition tape, talked about Captain Marvel and what I thought about the character, and that's what it was.
Great, all right, let's watch it. You scored solid?
No.
So you just sent it blindly and were waiting for a phone call?
Pretty much. I let go like God, basically.
And who was it that called you?
Dave Jordan.
Dave Jordan called you afterwards, and?
Dave Jordan's our music supervisor, pretty much all the Marvel films, and I pretty much collapsed. I remember when I got the call, I just like lost feelings in my knees. And then I actually thought I dreamt the whole thing for a few days. Like, what if I didn't actually get the call?
Well, that theme you wrote is amazing. I love that theme.
Thank you.
Great job, right? Come on. Really great. So, were you a superhero fan before this? I mean, you grew up in Turkey.
I did.
Right? Did you grow up in Istanbul?
Istanbul, yeah.
My brother's wife is from Istanbul, so I've been there, and it's if you've never been, you gotta go. It's amazing.
Istanbul is beautiful.
But tell me about growing up there, and what kind of exposure did you have to comic books or superheroes, or was that even a part of what you liked growing up?
Oh yeah, I mean the first film that I fell in love with was Superman, the '78 Superman, and I just the music and everything about it was just captivated me, mesmerized me, and I was just a what you would call a nerd, proud nerd. I loved He-Man, She-Ra, Superman, all of that stuff, and that was my world for a while.
Excellent. That's great. Fantastic. All right, Chris, what'd you bring for us?
I wanted to bring a clip from the show, and then Comic-Con said it had to be PG, and then the producer said also it it has to also not contain any spoilers because the show doesn't come out for 8 more days, which left us about 13 seconds that we could actually show. So what we ended up doing, we actually took some of the trailer footage, but we did put a score from the show on top of it, and that's what we're going to show you today. And here we are. The opposite of Shazam. All right, so here we go.
Good and pure, and you know, and we're in this world now where that line is blurred completely. So tell me, what was your approach on this?
So, so the concept of the boys is, for lack of a better quick description, if the Avengers or Justice League were actually completely narcissistic and corrupt and run by a massive greedy corporation, that's what happens. But the public doesn't know it, and the boys are supposed to basically take them down. And so it's very gritty, and our heroes are actually not the heroes. And so it's a Garth Ennis graphic novel that is based on the same guy who did Preacher, and it was created, and the showrunner is Eric Kripke, who did Supernatural, who also did Revolution, and was my next door neighbor in college, and we used to take vans and sleep on floors together at Sundance. We've known each other for 30 years, and so when he first called me about the show, he said, you know, it's basically the exact opposite of what everyone should expect superheroes to be. And so we started down that road, and then I turned in the first demos, and the comments were actually, you know what, it sounds too good, too clean, too produced. So this is the first time I really got to play a lot of my instruments on the score because he wanted it to sound crappy. He's like, I really want it to sound like a garage band. There's been a lot of garage bands. So I actually got to play a lot of the actual instruments on the score. And then there is music for the superheroes for the Seven, which is the team that's sort of the real superhero team that ends up being corrupt. And we did that with orchestra, but then we ended up taking the orchestra tracks and actually bending pitches and flipping things backwards to make them feel wrong. So, yeah.
So did you play the bass on that?
I did play this.
The bass is awesome. I love that. Do you play bass?
Just good enough to do that, actually.
Tell me, when you were growing up, what was your sort of go-to thing for comics or superheroes?
Well, I was a huge Star Wars nerd, massive. I just went to the Ford Theater in LA and saw the Empire Strikes Back projected it's my 37th time. I've seen it either in a theater or live. And I actually have tickets, even stubs from all that. So I was a huge fan. A little wrong. But I would say superhero. I mean, I loved everything superhero. Obviously, I loved Superman and Batman and all that stuff. I even loved Jerry Goldsmith's Supergirl theme, if we can remember that. Was fantastic.
Who's that?
Right, exactly. So I love stuff, but even like Wonder Twin powers activate. I mean, I watched all of that constantly.
You know, it's so funny you mentioned it. When I was, when my kids are older now, but when they were younger, they never watched anything that their friends were watching. So they didn't watch Barney, they didn't watch it. And I raised them on everything that I grew up with. So they were watching Super Friends, they were watching the Brady Bunch, they were watching. So they kind of grew up, and I realized what a mistake I made because they would go to school and it was like the other kids would look at them like they're from another planet. Because they'd be like, we watch the Brady Bunch every Friday night. And the other friends are like, what the hell is the Brady Bunch? What is this? Anyway, Blake and Sherry, what do you got for us?
We have a couple clips from Batwoman. Anybody see it last night? Yeah? Cool.
So, well, first I gotta say, like, the music that you guys have done fills my house because we religiously watch The Flash.
You emailed me that you and your son watch every week, and I'm like, no you don't.
Yeah, I swear to God, we do. We do.
Watches Flash every week. Yeah.
It literally became a thing. We have Flash, it's called Flash Night, and it's on Wednesdays. You're all invited. We go and we get hamburgers, you know, which we like to think they're the Big Belly burgers or whatever, you know, that whole thing. But we get burgers, we sit around, and my friend comes over, his son comes over, and we make a whole thing of it every day.
That's how I write the score for it too.
Yeah, with burgers.
Burgers, whiskey, Tuesday night.
I do want to hear more about that process after we check out the clips. Sherry, do you have anything to add before we watch?
Which one are we seeing first? Do we know? This one? Oh.
Here's first.
Cool. Do you want me to set it up?
Set it up for us.
Okay, so
Sure.
we're going to see, I think in this clip, we're going to see the villain for the show, which is very exciting. She when she's captured Ruby Rose, and they have this dialogue back and forth, and we find out towards the end, I'm not going to tell you in case you haven't seen it, we do find out towards the end that there's a very particular relationship between the two of them, and we'll see what happens.
All right, let's play it.
The original, the next generation, all that. Definitely Superman. We've covered that before too. It was, Christophe and just, delicious.
So were you a Star Trek fan on your own accord, or was that something your parents
Well, I
watched?
think my dad was, I'm half Chinese, and I think the nerdy side of my Chinese father just kind of came through, and it, just kind of, we would watch it together. It was a good family show.
Yeah, it's a great show. The original series.
Yes.
Come on,
Yeah.
give it up.
Yeah.
And Next Generation, of course.
And Next Generation.
Yeah.
Deep Space
All right.
Nine. I got Deep Space Nine as well.
Yeah. Excellent. So, Blake, what do you have to say for yourself?
Well, 8 years ago, I came to my first Comic-Con with this little show called Arrow. I had no idea what it was going to turn into. So now this is the 5th superhero show under the Arrowverse canopy. And 4 years ago, 3 years ago, who cares? I was asked to write a theme for Superman on one of our shows and panicked. But then when they told me the Bat family's coming, I super panicked, so no pun intended. So we got to do Batwoman, and this is a scene, when we were looking through it, Sherry was like, no, you can do this scene. It's my gift to your 10-year-old self. So I'll explain after the clip.
All right.
And the bats are coming.
Did you ever make your own Bat cave when you were a kid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
What I grew up on was the original Batman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only Batman theme that has ever been written. Come on.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Danny and Hans,
That's true.
friends of mine, but Neil, come on.
The best. The best.
Shark
repellent. Remember? Shark repellent.
Yeah.
From the Batman movie, the old Batman movie, that's the best. Yeah. So tell us about that shark repellent. What can you tell us?
I can tell you, my first comic book was Aquaman.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep. We still don't have an Aquaman show in Arrowverse, but
Do you remember where you would go to buy comic books?
yes. I went to a place called Whackers, 5 and Dime.
Really?
Yeah.
It was like a convenience store?
No.
What was it?
It's just a 5 and Dime store. I'm from Paris, Texas. Come on, we have a Whackers there.
I used to go to 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven. Anyone else? Did anyone else buy comic books when they were kids? Where would you get them?
In England, we didn't really have things like Marvel and DC. We had like the Beano and Dandy. You guys know what that is? Like really the opposite. And I remember when I first started coming to California as a kid with my family and discovered Marvel, it was like, what? Why don't we have this in our newsagents? Convenience stores. So yes, it was a late beginner in that respect.
Pinar, you were about to. Where did you get them?
So I started saving my allowance for soundtracks and comic books. One of the first things I ever bought, there's this place near the conservatory I attended. I would actually in school, this little like hole-in-the-wall place, and they had all kinds of like old stuff that nobody would ever buy, and I had like treasures in there. It was amazing.
Love that. Anyone else? No? I mean, I used to live at the 7-Eleven. That's where I bought my Star Wars cards, my Superman cards. I'm like literally a huge nerd, if you haven't noticed. But
I have a question.
What's that?
You've done a couple of movies.
I've done a few movies.
Yeah. Any of them superhero movies?
You know what's so funny? Yeah, I've done a couple superhero movies.
Any of them good?
I leave that up for other people to decide. Twitter tells me if what I do is good or not. Clearly.
Do you happen to have a clip from maybe the #1 movie in America?
I might. You guys want to see something? I mean, it's a small movie. It's an independent film. Not a lot of people have seen it, but so I want to get it out there. I'm hoping that if you see this clip, maybe you'll go see it. So let's roll the clip. That'd be great. Actually, right before I was coming out here, I was texting back and forth with Matt Reeves, who's a good friend of mine. And Matt Reeves is, of course, the guy who's directing the next Batman movie. And Matt and I worked on, Planet of the Apes together. We did Cloverfield. Yeah, I mean, no, Matt is really amazing. Matt's amazing. And so Matt wanted me to tell you that he's working very hard to make a good movie. So what I would like to do is, before we go to audience questions, I'd like to just do a little video from you guys to Matt saying, "Hey Matt, don't screw up our Batman movie." So if we could do that, when I point to you, "Hey Matt, don't screw up our Batman movie." Ready? Hey Matt, don't screw up our Batman movie! Yeah, you heard it. Don't screw it up. Excellent, thank you. Awesome. I've actually been able to see a few things that he showed me that he's working on, and it's pretty darn awesome. It looks really, really amazing.
So
Anyway,
you're gonna score the Batcave too.
what's that?
You're gonna write music for a Batcave.
I don't know. We'll see. I just know that my friend is working really hard right now, and I just, anyway, I'll send that to him, and then I'll forward that to all of you via text. So let's go to some questions from the audience here. Where are we here? Where's the? There we go. Right on.
How early in the process do you guys start? Do you see a clip of the movie? Did it tell you what the movie's about? How does it start? Where does the light bulb turn on? Thank you.
Ladies first.
It really varies. It's great if we can come on board as soon as possible. In the case of Captain Marvel, like I said, it was pretty early on. But it really varies. Sometimes near the very end. And, it's kind of been, I've done over 40 films and it's all been really different. But it's always nice to be involved from the start so that we can kind of co-inspire each other.
It's pretty unusual, but the coolest thing is if you're invited to set. And that happened on Shazam. I was invited to the Rock of Eternity set up in Toronto. And I just remember, there was just one scene between Billy Batson and the Wizard. And just that moment when the director calls action and you just see this instant transformation. And it's interesting because, it's very quiet because, of course, they're the speaking voice and you have to wear headphones to hear it. And it's all very small. And then when you see the final, it's this extraordinary cinematic event. It's really great to have been there and just to see that it all starts with that actor's intention and what they do with their eyes and how they inspire each other and all the various options and all those things. If you can get involved earlier, they can just absolutely inform the kind of the inner workings of the music. It's stuff you may not even notice, but that's the rarity. Normally, you've got 2 months, off you go. See you on the other side.
I think it's really interesting too if you get in on a project in script form. I think we're all very visual people, so I feel like it's a lot more interesting, I think, when you read the script and you have your own concept of what you think it's going to look like, but then all of a sudden you start to see the clips coming in, you see the scenes put together, and then you see the whole thing. And it's like, oh, this is such a different feel. But I think it's really good, as you're saying, you get in really early and then you can start to form your own ideas about what a character might want or need, and then again, when it turns into visual, it's totally cool transformation as well. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, and it's different from film to film. Sometimes you might have plenty of time, sometimes you have 0 time. It all depends on how it all works out. Actually on Star Wars, I had just 4.5 weeks to do that score, but right when I went to meet them about it, I got to watch the scene. You're talking about going to the set. I got to watch the scene where at the end of Rogue One, where Darth Vader is going through the halls and getting everyone, and I watched this whole thing, and it was literally just a guy banging around a fake lightsaber, and I'm watching this thing going, all right, well, I guess it'll work. And then, of course, you see the final film, and it just becomes exactly as Ben said, just this massive cinematic event. Thank you. Thank you. Next.
This question's for Michael. Seeing as how you did The Incredibles, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan of your work as well. What was it like bringing your stuff from The Incredibles, or your style, to the Marvel Cinematic Universe when they chose you?
Well, I think everything is, it's like building a suit for somebody. Whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to build a suit for this particular project, So if I'm a super suit maker, the music for The Incredibles is going to fit that movie perfectly, and hopefully if I do something for Doctor Strange, that's going to be a completely different idea, different thing, and fit him perfectly. And then again, with Spider-Man, same kind of a thing. So you're always trying to figure out what the character is you're writing for and how you're doing it. And superheroes are, you know, people too. So I'm also looking for the vulnerabilities in there when I'm developing whatever those themes are. But I mean, it's a lot of fun to do this kind of stuff, absolutely. Next.
Yeah, hi, this question's for the whole panel, but especially Michael, because I'm a huge fan of the horn parts that you write. Do you guys ever write musical parts for any individual musicians in mind, or do you just feel confident that no matter what you write, the incredible studio musicians will just be able to pull it off?
Oh, you're always thinking about who you have in the room playing for you. So in The Incredibles, there's a trumpet player named Wayne Bergeron, who is the greatest, right? He is, really, look him up, he's one of the greatest trumpet players you've ever heard. So I love working with him, and what I like to do is try and trip him up. So I will, you know, because I've known these guys for years, so I will write things that are incredibly hard to play and then watch them just suffer through it. That's fun, because I'm just sitting, anyway. But yeah, absolutely. Anyone else?
Well, I do think, you know, we get to know these musicians as dear friends, and I mean, we go to their weddings and we have them over when we're working on ideas, and but they're really funny because they are so damn good in LA. I had a session about a week ago, and my concertmaster, she came over and she said, you know, a little heads up, it would have been nice on this part. I mean, this is ridiculously hard. And I go, okay, sorry, I'll send you next time. And then she sits down and plays it perfectly, the first time through.
It's insane. And they're sight reading.
They're sight reading, yeah.
They've never seen it before, and normally take one could go in the movie.
Yeah. For me, the other thing I like to do is, now that I've gotten to a point where I have, you know, real projects, I love to use it as a way to get to meet musicians or work with musicians that I'm a huge fan of. So on something like when I did Agent Carter, I knew we were going to have a big sort of drum, you know, jazzy drum groove as Peggy was walking down the street to go to SSR the first time, and so I got Peter Erskine, who's probably one of the greatest jazz drummers who's ever lived, just amazing. And I'm like, okay, that's the guy I want. And so I literally could write it because I knew he was the perfect guy to play it. And there's a lot of amazing drummers, but like his groove for that was absolutely perfect.
Well, and you've got to, like you said, we've got to work fast. It's adorable. You had 4.5 weeks. I have 6 days to do a show. But you got to move fast so that you get to know the musicians, and you want to trust that your sound's going to be the same every week. So you do start writing for that specific player.
It's pretty cool too as well to do wild sessions before the final sessions on It and Annabelle. We just got the orchestra together for a day and just made some insane, crazy, scary sounds, and away from picture. And it basically gives you this kind of tapestry, you know, this potential tapestry of sound which you can then layer. And that's really fun because you can actually speak to the musicians and just give them emotional, don't look at the page, just like give them emotional direction, and then you get this extraordinary thing. You go, do I deserve this? You know, that's the joy of this whole process of working with the players.
Next.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
So this question is for the whole panel. So depending on when you guys get onto the project, there might be a temp score. So I wanted to ask, when there is one, do you listen to it? And if you do, how do you make it your own? And how do you manage like a director or producer that's maybe gotten attached to it?
Who wants to take that? the dreaded temp score question.
I hate temp.
Yeah, I turn it
I
off.
do. I get it that they have to have it, and it's. I will say that the only time it's useful is if I'm completely locked up idea-wise, and it's either I'll just listen but it really makes me mad. I mean,
Well,
makes me
it's
mad.
a necessary.
It's like, really?
It's necessary for them, though. It's necessary for them
necessary.
when they're editing and they got to show people, they got to show the executives of how it's going, so they need something there to give it an emotional arc.
I tend to turn it off.
Yeah, by the time
And
I
just
get it,
not
I just
listen.
turn it off. I don't even listen to it.
But actually, it's not temp score that makes me angry. It's when they fall in love with it that makes you angry, because they're just like, can we listen to temp? And like, No, they didn't even send it to me. I don't even have it in my studio, so I've never, no.
Sherry, Bernard, anyone else?
Well, I was gonna say, the one, so for me, a temp score is great, especially only if you can sort of figure out what it is in a broad sense, what it is that they love. Is it an instrument? Is it sort of a feeling? Is it the ensemble? That's useful, but when it gets really specific, it gets dangerous. But also, you know, I have to thank Eric Rippey on this one. There is a scene in the first episode of The Boys where everyone fell in love with the temp before I even saw anything. On one scene, and Eric is smart enough, and we know we've done this together long enough, where he just literally said, I'm going to use that, I'm not going to have you rip it off, I'm just telling you right now. And I just thank God, because otherwise it would have been a fight, and I don't really want to copy it. It's a one scene sort of set piece thing that gets used like a needle drop, as if it was a rock song or whatever. So I'd rather have it happen that way than have to copy something.
I actually like temp a lot of times. I kind of like what you're saying. I mean, I just like the idea that filmmakers are thinking about what they want the music to do or what they want the score to do. I think it's a really good talking point. I think it's particularly fun when, especially in our shows, like when we find temp from a different show that's completely unrelated. In Riverdale, when we had a temp of Supergirl in Riverdale, I was like,
yeah,
it's very, very interesting. But I think what it did is it opened up the dialogue of like, what are we going for? Oh, I see. Now we see what you want. It's you don't want the superhero feel in this show, but you want this very heroic moment. And sometimes, let's face it, it's easier to showcase it's easier to like listen to music and talk about it than to talk about exactly what you want. So I think temp can be a really good bridge, like a Rosetta Stone almost.
My favorite thing that happens though with temp is when it happens, the reaction when you play them what you wrote, and they just stare at you and go, oh my God, that's nothing like the temp, and it totally works. I love that moment.
Yeah, I think I love it, and then you got to play it again. Okay. It's crazy though, because I mean, to your point, I mean, there's that old saying that talking about music is like trying to dance about architecture, and it's true. I mean, you can only go so far as like, this has to be this kind of, dark but still emotional, and let's have it melodic but quite rhythmic, and just give you some options. But it's one of the other advantages of coming on board a project really early is that you can create temp for your filmmakers. I had that experience on A Cure for Wellness with Gore Verbinski. He made a decision to use no temp at all, and that meant basically sitting with him in 6 months, setting up a little rig next to his cutting room and just generating tons of suites that he then cut to. And then the hardest thing was then unraveling all that and turning them into cues which could be recorded. Poor music editors. But yeah, it's a tool. I mean, there's a definite love-hate thing, but I think like anything else, it's part of the process, and you've got to embrace it.
All right, we have time for one more question. So this better be the best question anyone has ever asked in the 50 years of Comic-Con. Ready? Go.
That was a lot of pressure. Yeah, Tristan, my question is, are there any difficulties you face while scoring a superhero movie as opposed to other genres? And if so, how do you rectify it?
Bernard, you want to take that one? Having just come off?
I think the process is the same. The process is all about bringing the scene to life and telling the story however we need to say it. I think the main thing with Captain Marvel for me was not to psych myself out, because I'm like, this is when you're working on a film that's not this huge, maybe some people won't see it. But with this film, like, man, everybody's gonna watch this thing, you can't mess it up. So there's a lot of pressure for sure, but when it comes to just the process itself, it's really the same, and it's super fun to work on something that you actually enjoy genre-wise. So it was a blast.
I mean, it's really intimidating, just given how iconic the Superman theme is, and like Batman, like the iterations. What Hans did with that, and following from what Danny Elfman. I mean, massive imposter syndrome. When you suddenly get right, here's Shazam, he needs a theme, and especially David wanted to feel like a golden age superhero. So yeah, it was scary because of this. You're standing on the shoulders of true giants, and but what an honor, what an incredible honor.
think also to your point though, it's also, there's responsibility that we have to the fans because like all these characters have actually existed before, or many of them have. So even if they didn't exist, let's say in movie form where we have to like follow in the footsteps of another composer, but sometimes like follow in the footsteps of just the storytelling. And I think that that's, like, there's a big responsibility that all storytellers have in the superhero world because again, it's like these characters are already living in the hearts and minds of fans. So it's a little bit of an expectation there, but I think it's also what helps, I would say, like us rise to the challenge a little bit because it is kind of it's a fun challenge, but there's a big responsibility there too.
The difference between those types of projects for me is with the superhero stuff, we're scoring to images that aren't finished yet. They're still working on the visual effects, so it's kind of hard to write this amazingly huge, triumphant thing when you've got a black blob going across the screen. And once there was a Supergirl episode that it literally just, in the middle of this action sequence, it said, missile comes in and hits alien. And they're like, we want the big swell to happen right when the missile hits. Where is it gonna hit? I've got a card telling me. So I guessed, I hit it.
I think it works best when we treat those characters like ourselves as humans and give them a human quality so that us as audience members, when we go, we can connect with them. I mean, that to me is the most important thing about it. But I just want to thank everyone here. Give these guys a hand. Question? Well, clearly it was the last one. The best question ever asked in Comic-Con history. So here is a signed Spider-Man Far From Home poster.
How about for Michael G. Pino?
Thanks for coming, everyone. We're going to meet at Blake's house afterwards, so you're invited to that.